Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashrothi, and this is the EVE Universe Show's continued coverage of the CSM 16, this time with the one, the inevitable, the Brisc Rubal. Before we begin, how you doing, Brisc?
I am doing well, Ash. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate being on the show. I like the idea that I'm inevitable, but I don't want to tempt the gods here a little too much. I'm going to knock on some wood. Of course, my dog hears that and thinks there's somebody at the door and starts barking. So my bad.
Let me be clear. When I said inevitable, I meant this interview is inevitable. I knew when you ran that you would definitely be one of the people that was in here talking.
As I am fond of saying, one of the most dangerous places in New Eden is between me and a camera. I say that about Villy too, but it's definitely true about me. If there's a podcast, I'm going to be on it at some point. So glad to be here.
All right. Well, since this is obviously going to be a hard one to keep reined in, let's just start with the rules. I have 50 minutes to explore the candidate, their platform, and their positions. I have their candidacy page in front of me, and I disclose anything that I know about them ahead of time, which at this point, I'm just going to skip that and say, Brisc is a public figure in many ways, and we will talk about some of that in the next hour. But, he and I have a long history. We've talked privately about things. We've talked publicly about things. Don't expect me to expose anything private today. But, I don't know if we'd consider
We've had meals together. We've gotten drunk in Vegas together. All kinds of fun.
I don't know if I would. I'm not going to be presumptuous to say that he would call me a friend, but like I wouldn't. I'd find that a nice thing. At any rate, let's begin. So, in the event that somebody doesn't know who you are, doesn't know who the CSM is, those kind of. I think you could probably sum up those two things together, but like, what is your history with the CSM so far?
So I first ran for the CSM, and for those of you who are unaware of what the CSM is the Council of Stellar Management, is an elected focus group of 10 players who are elected by the player base. We are then brought into the fold at CCP. We go to Iceland for one summit. We're supposed to go to Iceland for a summit. We work with the devs and provide feedback to them on game issues. We bring player concerns to them. They tell us and show us the things that they're working on, and we work together to try to make the game better. I first ran for CSM on CSM 13 in 2018. I was elected. I served most of that term until a little bit of unpleasantness that ended that term. After that, I took a year off in 2019, just went back to playing the game. 2020, I ran for CSM 15. I was elected, and I spent the last year on CSM 15. So I'm running now for my third term, my second full term.
Okay, so
that's me.
Right. So 3 terms. One of them got your second term in the first set got interrupted. Then you took a break, recalibrated, and then came back. And now this would be your second term of that second set of terms.
Correct.
I don't know if my explanation was any simpler than yours. It's probably worse, but thank you for confirming that. All right.
Basically, I had a year off. That was it.
Yeah.
Which was nice. I played a lot of EVE in that time.
And you danced over something, and I guess we might as well just get it out of the way. Let's dig into that unpleasantness just a little tiny bit. So what had happened was we woke up one morning, and everybody had received a notification that CSM candidate CSM member Brisc Rubal had been banned and removed from the CSM for, we're going to go with insider trading, basically. Like, the accusation was vague, but in the general direction of leaking NDA information, right? And
Correct.
This is something that has happened before. I mean, it's happened several times in other CSMs, and in fact, this kind of cynical nature of the CSM as a sieve of information, these NDAs are not effective, and that this is just a way, the CSM causes damage because of the disruptions to the pure sandbox by the leaks of these information. Like, that was used as kind of a it joined in on that energy, especially at first, but there was no real indication of anything what was going on. And for you, it was particularly distressful because you are you're in the public space in real life, and many people describe you as a politician, but would you describe yourself actually as a politician? Let's get that cleared up actually out of the way.
It's been a while. I mean, look, I call myself a politician because it's easier just to say that than to try to describe all the different things that I've done. I have served in public office twice. I've run for office twice. I was in the Bush administration. I ran elections for Fairfax County for 2 years. I currently work in Washington. I'm an attorney and a lobbyist. I represent the largest merchant marine union in the United States. I'm on Capitol Hill. Well, before times, I was on Capitol Hill every day.
In the
So I
long,
work
long
with
ago.
in the long ago. I worked with all kinds of folks from across both sides of the aisle to do my day job. And my name, Brisc, has been synonymous with my real name forever. I started using Brisc Rubal as a pseudonym in Star Wars Galaxy. So I've had this name for 20 years. And when I ran for CSM the first time, my shtick, because typically if you are a no-name candidate that nobody's ever heard of, who is not like an alliance leader, which then people would have heard of you, the only way you're going to get elected is if you have a shtick. I was the meme candidate in 2018, and my meme was the real life politician running for internet spaceship politician position. So that's how I got elected, and that meant that my real name was out there. And in 2018, it was kind of a big deal. Everybody seemed to like the idea of the real life politician running for CSM, and we got international news coverage. So when I was accused of breaking the NDA and leaking stuff to two members of my alliance, who then apparently were accused of using that information to make money, it was a big deal, and it caused me a lot of issues in my real life. My wife lost a client who was a video game trade association, and I had to basically jump through hoops and trying to explain to my 83-year-old Sicilian, Brooklyn, New York native boss why he's getting all these calls from reporters about his political director being in a video game scandal was a very interesting conversation. But I mean, the bottom line was we were accused on pretty flimsy information. We went back through. We weren't told exactly what we did in the beginning. We went back through and we tried to figure out what could this possibly be that got the three of us in trouble. And there was only one thing, and we knew that thing was not insider trading, because it was well documented that this had been something that was going on way before any information that could have made a difference to the transaction had been available. So we presented all this stuff to CCP, that we worked with them, and they acknowledged that they made a mistake. So we got full apology. I got a full apology and confirmation that I had not broken the NDA. I had done nothing that would have warranted perma banning, and they unbanned us, and they let all three of us back in the game. So I was pleased with that. I don't bear anybody at CCP ill will, obviously, because I went back a year later and decided to run again, despite everything that had already happened. But part of that was I wanted to basically prove to the handful of naysayers out there that, oh yeah, this guy, he has to be a liar. He's a politician. He can't have any ethics. He's a Republican. We can't listen to this guy.
Right.
That I cared enough still about this game that I wanted to go out and do this again. So I went out, put myself out there. It was by no means a sure bet. It was a tough race, but I pulled it out, and I spent the last year busting my ass trying to do what's best for the entire game for the youth community. I think I've done a pretty good job.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that, and that is ultimately the reason why I wanted to explore this topic with you, because, first of all, I mean, I remember I was in TIS Discord the morning of when you came in, and literally, I have no idea what's happening. Like we're all just trying to sort it out, and you gave us what little you knew, and we were just trying to figure out what was going on. It went over 2 weeks. It was some of the strangest. It's probably one of the strangest things I've watched unfold in EVE history since the Jita riots or whatever.
And I have to say, I am pleased with CCP. We didn't have to go very far to explain to them what happened before they recognized that they made a mistake, and then they were bending over backwards to try to make it right. So I definitely appreciated everything that happened, and again, there was no harm, no foul. We got everything worked out and taken care of, and I was back playing 2 weeks. I mean that I'll tell you that 2 weeks that I was banned was the longest that I have gone not playing EVE in years.
That's the real punishment,
weird.
right?
Right. I mean, it's
sorry
it's
to your
weird.
wife, but you lost 2 weeks of EVE.
Yeah, I know, and the worst part was if any of you, I know some of you guys are not in these big blocks, but almost all the null blocks, they base all of their services off of your in-game character and having your ESI. When you're banned, your ESI, all that stuff goes away. I couldn't even get on comms to talk to my friends because I didn't have access to anything when my account was gone. So it was like being completely, other than Discord, I had no way of talking to anybody. And even in Discord, I got kicked out of the Discords too. So there was just a handful of places where I could still talk to people. It was pretty isolating for that 2 weeks.
Are you a director?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I am nothing. I am.
Okay.
I always make jokes. I am the most famous line member in Eve. I do not have any responsibilities whatsoever.
Yeah, because I just realized,
I'm not a director in my corp. Nothing.
Yeah, that just made me suddenly realize that if like one of my accounts got banned for whatever reason, knock on anything that would help. But like it would be bad because not just I would be able to log in, but like I can't think of how many services might get shut off because my like corp API key would be invalidated. Oof. Anyway, okay, so
I know,
but
it's scary, ain't it?
I don't like this wasn't supposed to be all about exploring that because that isn't affecting how you are a candidate now. I did want to I do want to say that I know the details of the situation, not to go into it right now, just because it's a kind of a waste of time to go into it right now. But I agree with you, you know, in your assessment of that it was unfounded or what, like both what they thought it was and the fact that it wasn't you doing the wrong thing. So that got fixed, but you didn't finish up that year, and you decided not to try that again the next year. But you did try again the year after and got elected, which I found very surprising. Not the fact that you got elected, but the fact that you came back at all. Like I think that was the cherry on how bizarre this whole thing was to watch, because it's like I couldn't understand why CCP was doing what they were doing, and then you know somebody even in the chat suggested that you could have sued, and like yeah, he could have, but obviously you didn't because you in the end you just wanted your video game back, right? Like,
well, I mean that's the thing. I didn't even have to. I'm a lawyer. I do not make legal threats idly, and right. It's a last resort. It's not something that I'm not one of those lawyers that instantly, oh, I'm going to sue you. No. In my experience, if you get to litigation, it means everybody has fucked up.
Sure.
So, oh, absolutely. You know, that you never want to end up in a court. You end up in a courtroom, both lawyers have messed up. So for me, I wasn't going to go that route unless I absolutely had to. And I knew what my limits were. And I never got anywhere close to having to even get there because they took care of everything early, which was nice. And that frankly, I think speaks volumes about CCP and their love for the community, and they're willing to get things right. They do not want to ban people unfairly. I know it happens, and I'm a big advocate for there being some kind of due process. And I've talked to Hilmar personally about having an ombudsman that goes through and reviews bans to make sure that they are fully warranted and those types of things. But I know that they're just people. They make mistakes. But being willing to own up to them, especially when, owning up, you're telling the entire world that you made a big mistake. I think that takes a certain kind of company, and it's rare to have someone do that without having the pressure of some kind of legal issue out there. And they never did. So I appreciated that they did that without having to go anywhere close to a courtroom, which made me happy.
Did having this happen change your priorities or the way you operated as a CSM when you got elected again? In other words, did you add, hey, we should probably review our banning action process on top of the things that you focus on? Because did this act as a exposure of potential mistakes? Like, thank God it happened. This time it happened to Brisc Rubal, but how many times does it happen to somebody that doesn't have such defense? Like,
absolutely. I mean, and that's something that I was concerned about, and we've talked about it. It's hard because you guys will see in the community that the issues of RMT and botting are such I don't want to say that they're big issues because I don't think they're as big as people make them out to be, but they are such flashpoints for public opinion. Mm-hmm. And there are people who are 100% certain that everybody in certain groups are bots. They are 100% certain that everybody in certain groups are making tons of money off the game and those types of things. And so there's always calls for banning people or saying, you know, get rid of this group or get rid of that group or neg wall at this corporation or go after this alliance, and all their people are botters and stuff. And I think that does a disservice because for the most part, those players don't have any way to clear their names. They
Right.
can't go out there and say, I'm not a botter. Here's proof. Nobody's going to believe them.
The mere act of saying that you've been banned leads people, like, it's got that, you know, that scarlet letter effect, right? Like, you've been accused, and therefore, of course, you're saying that you must have done it. The assumption is on guilt because, of course, they're saying that they didn't do anything. Nobody ever says, you got me.
And it's true, but I'll tell you, Ash, you're going to like this. An Aminet, who is one of my colleagues on the CSM, he's been on for 5 terms. He started in CSM 10, and now he's on CSM 15. He's running for his 6th term. He will tie Steve Renukin if he wins for longest tenured member, but then he got his term limit, so he's going to have to take a break. He loves to say that you haven't really become an EVE veteran until you've eaten a bullshit ban. He's been banned. Merkel Chen, who is my other colleague from the Imperium, was banned. Aerith, who used to be a colleague of mine in the Imperium, was banned. Sword Dragon, banned. Everybody, Jintan, banned. Even Suetonia was banned. There have been so many little things where things will get messed up and people will get a ban, whether it's, you know, they think they traded their account or I think in Merkin and Aminet's case, there was somebody affiliated with a group that they were affiliated with that had gotten busted for RMT, and there were questions about whether they were involved in it because there were transactions and stuff, and it was absolutely clear there was nothing about it that was true, and it got fixed pretty quickly. But I remember Merc freaking out because he wasn't able to log in for like 2 days, and he's the head of the largest corporation in Goon Swarm, one of the largest new player corporations, and he's in the exact same situation as you, Ash. You know, if he's locked out forever, there's a ton of people that are going to get screwed because he's got control of all this stuff.
Well, entire websites stop working.
Right, exactly. You know, so it's one of these things where I feel like, given how important this game is to so many people, there needs to be at least some kind of modicum, some kind of an appeals process, some kind of a way to get out there and clear your name. And that was one of the things I was happy to see. And I kind of tried to steer them this way when they changed some of their banning policies and they put in the ability to put appeals in. A lot of players that had gotten permabans came back and appealed and were allowed back to play. That was a good thing. I was very pleased that they did that last year. So I think we're kind of moving in the right direction in that regard. I don't recall whether it happened when if it had happened on CSM 15, I would have taken credit for it. So I think it happened on CSM 14.
That's kind of what I was asking for. Yeah.
It's something that I brought up. And again, I talked to Hilmar about it directly on more than one occasion. So I was happy to see that they were willing to do something like that because, you know, this game means a lot to a lot of people, and being banned, especially if you don't think you did anything wrong. And even when you know you did and you're contrite about it, I'm always a big fan of second chances.
Saying that you brought it up is probably the most hilarious thing that's been said in one of my interviews so far. But so I take apparently I'm not a real EVE player because I've never been banned. But what I will say,
we can fix that for you, Ash. Let me let's talk offline. We'll get you banned. Don't worry.
I will throw 2 things in there and then we'll move on to the next or you know whatever. But first of all, like in EVE, because every action matters, what that means is that CCP is encouraged to act first and then verify, because it's better to ban somebody who you suspect is doing. It's like I hate to put it this way, but it's like a real life terrorist threat, right? Like if you suspect somebody is about to do something bad, it might be worth like at least stopping and checking rather than just letting it happen completely. So in this case, if you know that somebody is botting or whatever, or you suspect that somebody's botting, or you suspect that somebody is doing an NDA breach or whatever it is, it is easier for them to shut it down and then restore it rather than let the broken action happen and then try to like put the pieces back after the fact if there is actually going to be gameplay results of it. So that's number 1. And then number 2, due to the absolute competitive nature of this game and the lengths that people are willing to take that competition, both validly and invalidly, weaponized moderation is very much a thing in Eve. So it isn't even about like you got caught or whatever. It's the fact that people like Brisc probably are constantly being reported by all kinds of things because his enemies want something to stick.
Every time I say anything that's even remotely mean to someone, either on Reddit or the Evo forums, I instantly have people saying, this is below your status as a CSM member.
I love
to which
that.
I typically will respond with something along the lines of your mom.
Yeah, no, totally. And it's great. But
Yeah.
but that's why it's really important for us to care about this kind of revision of banning processes and stuff. You said that it changed how you work on the CSM. The main change that you highlighted came before you were on the CSM. Do you feel like your return to the CSM has moved the needle at all, or continued that effort, or in any way improved the situation?
I mean, I would like to think that having me in the room and knowing that, I was a high profile figure that got hit with a bullshit ban and it had impacts on my real life, that at the very least that I'm just a constant reminder of, yes, guys, you make mistakes. Yes, we make mistakes. Yes, we have to be careful about what we do. I think that probably is a benefit that me being there that nobody else could say. So at the very least, it keeps these guys on their toes and reminds them. And it's one of the other things, and I try to explain to players, I have no reason to love this company. I have no reason to be a CCP fanboy. I have no reason. I'm not one of these guys who is running for the CSM because I love Eve so much and this company is so cool and I want to meet all my favorite idol people. CCP Fozzie is the greatest guy ever. I want to go meet him in real life. No, I know all these guys. I'm doing this because I care about the community, not because I care about the company.
Right.
And I'm not going to go out if I say I think people are giving CCP a bad deal and I think they deserve a little more credit, it's coming from a place that's true, and I think I can be credible about that because I have no reason to love this company. At the same time, I think I'm a very good critic, and I'm more than willing to stand up and tell them when I think they've made mistakes, and I do it all the time. We did it last week on the Meta Show with some CSM related stuff that I was mad about. So I try to be fair. I want people to look at me and say, all right, I like Brisc. He's tough but fair. He'll give them credit. He'll admit when he's done something wrong or when he said something wrong, and he'll hold these guys accountable for when they do that. And that's kind of the way I've tried to run myself while I've been on the CSM.
Awesome. What is the thing that you want to highlight the most about like what you feel like what is one thing that you feel highlights what you have gotten done as a CSM member? And what is one thing that you feel that you've put a lot of effort into that you feel is just there and you're afraid won't make it if you're not elected in?
I mean, first of all, obviously, I've kind of become synonymous with the red dot toggle, finally getting the red dot toggle added to the game. And that is something that I have zero qualms about taking full credit for because I bird dogged that issue for a solid year. I would not shut up about it.
You're saying that you're taking responsibility for the red dot.
For getting it fixed.
For getting it fixed. Okay, good.
For getting it fixed.
Got it. I was like, that is a weird way to stand in front of a firing squad.
It was put in the game, I believe, if I recall correctly, in September, October of 2019. I was not on the CSM at that point. And I hated it. And it drove me batshit. Because I'm a veteran player. I know where the stuff I have goes. I know how to search through my inventory if I need to find something. I don't need this damn red dot that doesn't work half the time either. It's bugged. I'm going into space. People in my fleet are looting stuff and I'm getting a red dot on my inventory. I know I didn't pick anything up. And right. It never worked properly. It was always really annoying. And when I ran for the second time in CSM for CSM 15, I made getting rid of the red dot one of my campaign platform things. I wanted to do that. That was going to be one of the things that I pushed for. Now, I knew full well, having already served on the CSM, that the chances of me being able to deliver on that were relatively low because if people that go into the CSM with an agenda saying, I'm going to fix X, those people tend to fail and they tend to flame out, and then they tend to go off, and you never hear from them again.
9 times out of 10, they get their feelings hurt. Absolutely.
Exactly, because they're one thing that they promised everybody they couldn't deliver on, and boom, they've lost credibility. So I knew I was going out on a limb doing that, but I said at the same time, even if I can just get them to fix the bugs so that this thing works the way it's supposed to, then I will at least done my job. And as an old school, negotiator, I work for a labor union. We do negotiations. You always ask big, and you whittle your way down to the middle where both sides can feel like they walk away with something. And so I started off with get rid of the whole thing. And I knew that we were never going to get rid of the whole thing, but I thought that adding a toggle would make a lot of sense. And so I started pushing, and I would meet one-on-one. CCP Shreddy and I talked about it multiple times. I'd talk about it in every meeting. I'd make jokes about it. I'd bring it up on the meta show. I'd ask X in chat if you want the red dot toggle, and you'd see this massive scroll of 1,000 people Xing up and putting the pressure on. Finally, it was one of these things where I felt like we had hit a critical mass. And then CCP Goodfellow pulled me aside and said, by the way, we're getting a dot toggle for you. And I was like, I did it. There you go. I killed a red dot. So that was a big, and that was a solid year worth of effort. Now there are people out there, and I love EVE players. I love you all so very much, but you drive me fucking crazy sometimes. And one of the things that drives me absolutely crazy is, oh, you got it fixed. Why was it even in there in the first place? It took a whole year. I'm like, guys, just say thank you. Just say thank you. We appreciate it. You did it. Great. Good work. Thanks, CCP. You fixed it. This is great. So
yeah. You want to reward the effort.
We finally got it done. But man, I tell you, there is nothing. The only thing that CCP can do to make people angrier than fixing something immediately is fixing it a year later. Like, even if they fix it, they're still only going to get like a half credit because there's still going to be somebody out there salty that they put it in the first place.
And two things and there's going to be people who don't pay enough attention to know that it got fixed and still just keep complaining about it anyways.
Oh, not a fleet goes by where I make a joke about fixing the red dot and somebody's like, how do you turn that off?
Yeah.
And I have to walk them through it so that they don't have to get stuck with it. It's the nature of EVE.
I want to, and also, but the other thing is that the player base and just players in general, I don't think appreciate how long it takes to develop games, to do game development. Like a 6-month cycle to go from the identification of a problem to the implementation and deployment of a solution is actually not bad in the grand scheme of things when it comes to especially bugs and stuff. And I really want to highlight that in particular when it comes to your effort on the red dot, because the risk really is what I call the good enough solution, right? And this is a problem in all of game development and software development. But EVE has really fallen into this pit trap, especially back in the day when they had long periods of time between iteration on any given feature. You would get a feature that had some pretty, these small problems that end up being just enough of a problem that it makes these features that could be great not anywhere close to as successful as they could be. So a small iteration pass maybe would be all it takes to make it done. But when that doesn't happen, when iteration, then we get what's called the good enough solution, right? It's good enough. We can't allocate another set of cycles. We can't do another faction warfare rebalance. It's good enough. There's nothing that's currently damaging the game. There's nothing we fixed any of the systemic problems to it. There's a good enough solution. So until somebody has a 20% time to make it their passion project, it probably isn't going to be fixed. And so something like the red dot was dangerously close to being a good enough solution. And Brisc being there was able to keep on going. No, it isn't.
Every time. And I think Bunja, I have to laugh because he brings up the dong sound. Remember the dong sound every time you got a kill mail? That drove everybody crazy and they took it out in like a day. There are still people that bring that up to me. I can't believe they thought that was a good idea in the first place. Why did they even do that? That's the kind of thing that they tend to deal with. Even when they mess up and they acknowledge they mess up and they fix it, somebody's going to tuck that away and they're going to complain about it later. It's just the nature of EVE players. It's what we do.
There's another half to that.
Second question.
Go on.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say another half to that. Oh, shoot. We're doing this.
No, it's fine. Keep going after it.
Yeah. The other piece about that, though, is that CCP is actually introducing a lot of this stuff all the time, right? Like the Gong is a great example. they've been adding in little audio cues and flourishes and like whatever, some game juice as it were, quite a bit. The gong just happened to rise above player attention, and so everyone noticed it all of a sudden, and so it's become a big deal. So CCP acts like they don't understand why it should have been a big deal, and the player base act like it like they don't understand why CCP doesn't like see this as this really distressing thing. And so it takes people like on the CSM that's able to see both of those situations and help both sides understand what it actually takes, because that's the other half of it. A lot of these changes are happening, and so it's about making these changes subtle enough that it doesn't upset people, but yet achieves the goals of kind of increasing the amount of information and awareness in the UI, as well as rewards.
And
stuff.
I mean, that's one of the big needles that is very difficult for CCP to thread. And I bring this up to them all the time. This is an 18-year-old game. You have people who've been playing this game like me. I started playing in 2006. That have been playing this. We've gone through multiple UI changes. We've gone through multiple. I mean, I still miss the old RNs. I still miss the old warp, docking request accepted voice, the old Aura voice that they used to laugh at you when you'd get potted in during the tutorial. I miss that stuff.
Now she just threatens to kill you.
Right. You silly, clumsy pilot, you got yourself killed, and that type of thing. People get very wedded to this. They're very used to it. I mean, even most recently, the most recent change they did that I was scratching my head about. Now, granted, I think it's not as huge a deal because there are workarounds, but when they shifted the D-scan window so the map is on the right instead of on the left, that pissed so many people off because they had gotten so used to it. Their muscle memory was, this is how it's laid out, and now you're changing it. And there's no real explanation as to why it was done, but they did it anyway. That's the type of stuff that drives players crazy. And I know CCP tries to innovate. They're trying to fix the stupid, as CCP Burger likes to say, so that when you're bringing new players in, it can be a little bit more intuitive, because this is not an intuitive game at all. And it's this old and it's different from every other MMO. So just getting people in and getting them familiar with the way that things work is really difficult. So you want to make it easy for them. But at this, and these guys are also out there and they're talking to their colleagues and other companies that are developing stuff. And you got all kind of UI, UX best practices out that are out there. The red dot is a common thing now. It's not something that's like unique to EVE. It's in every game, or at least it's in a lot of these games, especially the loot.
Every UI anywhere.
I mean, right? It's my freaking phone is covered in freaking red dots, and it drives me crazy. I got one on my phone right there. Like, I got a missed phone call. I got a red dot, and I'm super anal about clearing that stuff because I'm OCD about it. But they have to recognize this is an old game. People are used to the old stuff. If you're adding new UI elements, give us the ability to go back to the way it was before. That's all I asked. Just put a toggle in. And I know that there's a lot of pressure, a lot of complaints and concerns with the company that if something is so annoying that you need to toggle it off, let's just take it out completely. But I don't think that's always true, especially when you have things. For example, Merkel Chen and I and Aminet stream almost every night. We have our stream called Rampage Incorporated. It's us drinking beer and playing the game together. And I always laugh because Merc uses the old map. The old map that's been around for 6 years. That was pre 6 years ago. The beta map, has been around for 6 years. I use the new map because I just never toggled the old map on. He uses the old map because that's what he's used to.
Right.
That's great. Let us have both. There's nothing wrong with letting us have both. Give us the options. And I tell them that every single time. And sometimes they remember and sometimes they don't.
Well, there is some cost to that. Like, for instance, the fact that we have two maps is a certain amount of technical debt. Anytime that they try to add any new feature, they have to at least consider whether or not it can also be implemented in the old map, or whether or not this is going to be another difference, a functionality that they no longer have in the old map, or that like a difference between the two. So likewise with like, the problem is that if you try to make every single thing that they introduce into a toggle, that would make a lot of toggles that I think would eventually feel like, why can I turn all these things on and off? Like, I don't even understand what anything to do. But like, more importantly, the act of allowing a user to turn on and off something is a separate task than the actual thing itself. Which, given the fact that
you're right.
Right. So I believe that like from a software development point of view, they'd be concerned about like this extra work being required to a feature might make it so that the feature can't be made at all. Right. Because they have tight budgets. They have only so many cycles. It could be just enough cycles to make it so that they can't do it. Um, and that's the reason why I bring this up is because, again, that's why this is an incredibly delicate situation. You can't just say toggle everything. You can't, you can't just say that they should expect it all. This is a growing, ongoing, evolving thing. As Eve continues its development, we will have good things, we will have bad things, and the CSM's job is to be there to help. If it's to help the players understand, if it's to help the CCP understand, if it, whatever. And I think that if nothing else, Brisc has proven in his years time as CSM that he ran on the platform of being that kind of person and has provably been that kind of CSM member, regardless of what you want to think about his politics or whatever. That is a role that I can vouch for, at least from my observation, you have done. When it's time to say to the player base that they're wrong, you do. When it's time to say to CCP, you're wrong, you do. And you care enough that when you got kicked out, you say, I understand you made a mistake, and I care enough that I want to go back into that, as you put it, breach. And that's, to me, that says so much about how much you believe in both EVE Online and in the CSM. So I want to give it back to you with the idea of like, give me a little bit of an understanding about why you feel so passionately about the CSM that you would go back into it when it almost ruined or when it cost your wife business, it almost ruined your own career. You want to do it again. Why are you out here? Why do you care that much?
This is one of the very few things in Eve that I think that I have a unique skill set for that makes me very good at it. I'm never going to be a great FC. I have done it. I'm not good at it. I like being a line member. I like not having the responsibility. I don't want to be an alliance leader. I'll do it if somebody forces me to, but I don't want to. I have enough work to do in real life. I do not need another space job. But CSM is something that I feel is complementary to the skills that I already bring to the table. The stuff that I enjoy the most doing, going on talk shows, talking to people, going out, doing, the lobbying type thing, which is what I do for a living, and I'm pretty good at it. And I like doing that internally on the CSM, and it's almost the same thing. It's all of the skills that I have developed over a lifetime of working in politics and going to law school and doing all the stuff that I've done. They all apply on the CSM. They don't all apply in Eve directly. You do not need a space lawyer in Eve. In fact, you want the opposite, because all we're going to do is mess stuff up. The last thing you want is me as your Diplo, because I'll never let you sign anything, because it's all going to be jacked up and I'm going to have to rewrite it all. So when it comes down to it, I know that I have a certain level of skills that I like and things that I'm good at. I like making videos. I like making funny stuff. I like doing talk shows. I like being a talk show host. I like being able to run for office in the CSM and going out there and glad handing people and getting to know everybody, and then going out and competing against all of these other really famous players and winning. That's fun for me. That's part of the fun of Eve. So the ability to go, and then once I get elected, to go up there and bust my ass and do the job the way that I would do if this were like a real life political gig, that's part of the fun for me. I really and truly enjoy it, and I like being a community advocate. I like working with the players and finding out what they care about and what they don't care about. I like the fact that people trust me to come to me knowing that if I tell them I'm going to, I'll bring this up, that I'm going to do that, and that I'm going to advocate on their behalf. And even people that are diametrically opposed to me in the game, who've shot my ass more times than you can count, they're the same people that say, yeah, Brisc, I know you're not on our ballot, but I'm going to vote for you anyway because I like what you do for the game. That is part of the fun of EVE Online to me, and it always will be. And that's the thing. I like being on the CSM. When I'm not on it anymore, it's going to be sad, because that's a part of the game that I kind of enjoy. But at the end of the day, for me, this game has been as much of the stuff that I do outside of the game client as it is the stuff that I do inside, although I do a ton of stuff inside. In fact, I'm kind of excited. One or two more fleets, and I'm going to crack the 10,000 killed, ship killed mark, which I've been trying to get for a while, ever since Pando made fun of me for not having 10,000 kills because he thought I was a scrub. I've desperately tried to get that. So I'm looking forward. I got like 53 more I got to do. So I love EVE. I love the game. I love the players. I love the community. being on the CSM has been a lot of fun, and I hope that for as much fun as I'm having, that I'm doing a good enough job that people are going to want to keep me around.
Well put. So going back to the whole like politician and all that stuff, and in your previous campaigns, one of the things that has what I've obviously I'm aware of you. I've watched a lot of your stuff. We've talked before. I don't like follow your everything, so you're one of those people that I'm kind of tangentially aware of. Um, but the way I've always kind of personally felt about your campaign and your time on the CSM is, and I'd love to get correction or insight into this, is that it really felt like at the time that you showed up, the CSM was a big deal, but it was kind of amateurish. There was a lot of people that didn't take it seriously. We had lots of, the issue of people even getting elected and then not doing anything at all was a serious issue. And even, the candidates that wanted to get elected, the issue is that, like, I've said it before. The thing I love about EVE Online is it's a role-playing game where that actually is real. Like, you're not a tank or a paladin because you chose that. It's like you can be all these different roles within the game, but you have to actually do those things, right? You can be a military commander, but you got to be able to inspire people and perform tactical, decisions. You can be an industrialist, but you got to be able to manage real supply line issues and, personnel issues and payout issues and stuff like that. You can be a politician, but you have to be willing and able to get the votes. And I've even cited this as being like, this is the reason why the CSM is important, even if the CSM as a body doesn't actually do anything as an actual like advisory panel. The fact that we have space politicians adds value to EVE Online. To that end, I really feel like you came in at a time in which we did have some people that like rocketed to popularity through their videos or other stuff like Chance. Just before you. But I feel like you came in, saw that there was a bunch of space nerds doing space politics, and put on your jacket and said, let me show these kids how it's done. And so, the politician, not politician thing, like the fact that it is a politician shtick, like we get to all be, space versions of what we want to be. And in the same way, like you've really embraced this space politician. And on the one hand, that has, I believe, honestly improved the CSM as a whole. I think that having somebody who does try to treat it as if you were 100% straight edge politician, like actual wearing a suit and tie at every single meeting, doing like what you would expect from a politician trying to get elected. I think that improves our community, and I appreciate and I love the fact that you do that.
Thank you. And you're right. I mean, look, you're absolutely right. I think when I came in, I saw, hey, look, there's elections. This is cool. But I never ran for anything because I didn't think I would have a chance. And frankly, for the first 8 or 9 years that I played EVE, I was a solo player. And you can read about it in my story on the CSM forums. I didn't play with any. I didn't have friends in the game. I just was a high sec guy. I would go around. I'd run missions. I wanted to get into a Raven real bad. So I just ran missions and trained my skills. And every couple of months I'd quit playing, and then I'd come back another month later and see what was going on. And I kept sub for most of the time. And then I was like, I want to try my own corporation. So I made my own corporation, and it had me in it. And that's all that it ever had in it, because I didn't go out and recruit anybody because I didn't know anybody. And I was intimidated by the game. It wasn't until I got into nullsec when a buddy of mine, a real life political friend of mine in Virginia, said, hey, I play this EVE game. Have you ever heard of it? I'm like, yeah, I play EVE. I've had it for a while. He's like, well, who do you play with? I'm like, myself. Yes, I said I play with myself, and yeah, that's what I said. Anyway,
Jesus.
I told him, I said, hey, if you want to go to HighSec, come hang out with HighSec. He's like, no, you got to, don't worry about that stuff. Get down here. You got to come down here with me. So I ended up packing up everything that I owned, which was an Osprey Navy issue and some Plex. I sold the Plex, got some ISK, and I went up north to Tenal, and I went and joined my friend's corp, and I hung out with him for a couple months, and then we went to a new corp in the same alliance, and that's how I got started in nullsec, and I've been here ever since. But it wasn't until my corp mates found out what I did for a living and said, "Oh, you got to run for CSM." Like, why would I do that? I don't know anything about this. I've been playing the game for a while, but why would I run? I'm not Villy. I'm not Pro God. I'm not, Sutonia. I'm not Jintan. I'm not Sort Dragon. Nobody knows who the hell I am. I'm just some random lineman. I don't have an alliance behind me. How the hell am I going to get elected? And they said, "Don't worry about it. You can do it. You just got to run it like a campaign." And so we started making jokes, and the guys, like one of the guys in my corp is amazing. He will take a joke and run with it as far out as you possibly can. And he had set up a fake website and all kinds of stuff to try to get me to run. And I finally said, "You know what, I'm gonna keep the joke going because I like a good joke." And we did it. We did it. So I ended up saying, "You know what, if I'm gonna run, I'm gonna put my papers in, I'm gonna make this. I can't just not go balls to the wall like I would if this were real life." So I did what I would have done in real life. I got my cabinet together, which all my old staff members, I had them come back, and we sat down. I said, "Guys, I'm running for this Internet Spaceships game thing." The best thing that I loved about them was not a single one of them looked at me and was like, "Dude, that's weird." They're all like, "Oh, okay, yeah," because they knew me. They knew this. I'm a nerd at heart. As Napoleon Dynamite says, I am possibly the biggest nerd of all time.
Why not? Some people collect stamps. Who cares? You do
right,
you.
Exactly. I play video games. I'm a nerd. I like it. So I said, we're going to run it like campaign. So I did. I figured out, all right, I looked back. I went back through. I figured out in terms who I had to target, how I had to get number of votes, how many votes I needed to win, how the system works. Because the STV vote system that the CSM used to get elected, unless you are from like Norway, no one is going to understand it. And in America, we have first past post. It's been that way forever. You got two political parties. That's it. It's nothing like ranked choice voting. It's not anything anybody here is used to. So I had to teach myself all of this stuff. And I was an election law expert at the time. Like I knew everything there was to know about American election law. And I had to learn a whole new voting system. I had to figure out how to make it work for me. I had to figure out what my base of support was going to be, who was going to vote. I went out and I was a pain in the ass. I bird dogged it every day. Somebody told me they were voting for me. I wrote it down. And I went back and asked them, "Hey, did you vote yet? If you voted, tell me how many times you voted." So I tracked all of this stuff. We did a campaign commercial. I bought Facebook. There were Facebook ads for CSM that had never happened before. But I had done all of that stuff because I wanted to make it like a real campaign. I did every TV show or every Twitch show that would have me, and I turned it into this big thing, and it became a meme, and I got elected. And that was more proof, in my opinion, that you don't have to be space famous. You don't have to be some kind of crazy alliance leader. You don't have to have some super in-depth knowledge of the game in order to get elected to CSM. All you really got to do is have a good story and be willing to put the shoe leather in, and you can make it happen. And I've seen other candidates since I did that have proven that they can do the same thing. I think that's how partially how Omega got elected. I think that's how Phantomite got elected. I think that's how Torvald got elected. These guys put the work in, they busted their ass, and they got in without having a huge base of nullsec support. Now, granted, I had the initiative behind me, but I didn't have the Imperium ballot. For me, has never gotten me elected to anything, and I wasn't an alliance leader. I was never top anybody's ticket, so it was one of those things where you put the work in. And I hope that inspires people to say, Brisc did it, well, I can do that. And they go out and they try it too. And I think that's one of the reasons why this election, you've seen so many cool things that have happened. Like Baculus doing the Kenny G thing that was brilliant. I loved it. You've got all of these other guys. Moldavia's doing commercials and Riker doing commercials. And a lot of these guys going out and putting themselves out on all these shows. I've seen Ricks do a ton of shows. That makes me happy. I feel like that's maybe a little bit of Bristol campaigning rubbing off on the other players, and I appreciate that.
I would have absolutely expect such a thing from Ricks, but I agree. I quite frankly agree that the reason why campaign videos are standardized more now is because you being on the CSM and running and being part of this for 4 years has raised the bar and expectation of what it takes to be, to run a CSM candidate, in the same way that like a new military commander, a new musician, or a new, a podcaster or whatever can help show people. We've actually, Rix is a good example of somebody, like, because he comes from the real life graphics design community. So there's a lot of people that like to make graphics design for Eve, and having a real graphics design person come in and say, "Let me show you how it's done," not only lets us get really awesome graphics, but helps us all become slightly better graphics designers. You, in the same way, I feel like not only did you kind of bring your expertise to the table, but you kind of helped everyone else. You set a higher standard, and I would like to think that that is why some of this is happening. And at the very least, that you are primed for this new era of CSM ship, which I'm really excited for because, as I've said many times, the CSM is a tool that we have as player bases, and it's only as good as we make it. And so having people like that really are there to make the CSM as effective as possible, that aren't cynical about it, that aren't one-issued about it, that aren't trying to push an agenda through it, but are honestly appreciating the CSM process and system for what it is, which I believe that you do. I think that is unbelievably valuable, especially since you came in at a time in which I think that CSM was at its most critically lowest point. Like, there was legitimate cause and call for the disbanding of the CSM just prior to you being elected. Did that actually impact the early days? Do you feel that transition from like your first CSM to this CSM?
Absolutely. I mean, there's always a little bit of GER CSM. This is pointless. Why are we giving these guys a free trip to Iceland? Why don't we just take that money and hire another community developer or something like that?
Right.
But I will say this. CSM 13, I think, opened the eyes of a lot of people because you had like 6 or 7 of the members at any given point on the CSM were all either in the Imperium or in Goons. And that's when you started hearing the GSM, the Goons
Right.
Council, and that type of stuff. But the only reason that was possible was because Goons took it seriously and other groups didn't. And I think that you finally got the other big groups in nullsec, the other groups in highsec. Silent Coalition had a candidate last year. Code has had people run. You're getting some of the bigger groups that have names out there that people recognize. Wormholers got somebody elected on CSM 14, I think, with some help from us in nullsec. But it was one of those things where the organized groups that care about it and think it has value are going to put the effort to getting their guys in, and they're going to win. And I think people realize that, and they started saying, "Hey, if we don't get in there, we're not going to have a seat at the table. We need to start doing that." And I think that was a wake up call for a lot of folks, and that was good. But I'll tell you, I've been in this position before. The CSM is like any kind of lower level elected position anywhere in the world. Like right now, if I were to run for Congress and win, I'm a Republican. I would be a junior congressman in the minority party in a state where the majority runs everything but like 3 places. So I would have as little power as you possibly could have while still being in office. So what I would have to do if I wanted to be effective was I would have to go out there and have to raise a ton of money. I'd have to make friends, and I'd have to punch above my weight and be more influential in soft ways than in hard ways of I'm the big guy. I'm the committee chairman. I can decide whatever I want and you can't stop me. I've got to be persuasive. And I feel like the CSM is a similar thing like that.
Right.
The job is what you make of it. You can be effective. You can get things done. You can be influential. You can be persuasive. You can have an impact. Or you can go to a meeting every week and do nothing and just have the title, and that's it. It all comes down to what kind of work you're willing to put in and what kind of work you're going to do. And I think the difference between a good CSM and a bad CSM is the good CSM show up and they do the work. And it's not about the title or trying to act like they're cool or this is proof that I'm an expert at whatever because I got elected to CSM on this platform. Those types of players flame out and you don't hear from them again.
Absolutely.
But the ones that put the work in, who do the stuff behind the scenes, those are the players that you want on the CSM. Those are the players that you want out there actively doing things. Like I've said before, if I could clone 10 Innominates to be on the CSM, that would be great. If I could clone 10 Sort Dragons, Sort was on CSM 13 with me. He was one of the best CSMs I've worked with. Everybody hates him. Still people to this day, thank God Sort doesn't run again. I never had a problem with the guy. But I'll tell you, when we worked together, he was awesome. He showed up, he cared, he wore his heart on his sleeve, he knew how to push the buttons. He could play bad cop to my good cop. We could get stuff done. I really liked working with him. Those are the types of players that you want on there, not somebody that's just going to show up and take the title and then you never hear from them for another 6 months.
Right.
And unfortunately, that you never know what you're going to get with some of these guys when they get elected, especially the ones that are super popular or who are the meme candidates. We've had meme candidates who I think have been some great CSMs. I consider myself one of those. We've had meme candidates who've come in and done not much. So it all depends. But I think at the end of the day, this job can be more than it appears to be on paper if you get the right people who are willing to do what they can and use the tools and use the relationships and the abilities that you are given, which is mainly access to the people that make the decisions. If you use that and you do it right, you can have an impact. And I think that's important for folks to realize.
So we are running low on time, so it's technically back over to your time, but I do want to give you one more prompt for you to chew on if you would like to. My viewers are often those who are not paying attention to the, null blocks and explicitly not, largely interested in the war, or at least not paying attention to it every day. They may only know you from the war because the war's been now going on for quite some time. This has changed everyone's perception of things quite a bit because the propaganda of the war kind of affects things. Some people may only know you as your character, or they may not understand the division between the two, or they may not understand the relationship between the Imperium and Initiative and how you fit into all of this and how that affects your candidacy. So before we wrap this up, I kind of wanted you to speak to those people who may not know exactly what's going on and help them understand, pull that apart a little bit.
So at least when it comes to nullsec candidates, what you typically have, the largest groups will put a ballot together and they will tell their members, hey guys, this is the official ballot of our group. Some groups like Goons are very strict. They say you will vote this ballot. If you urge someone to vote some way other than what we tell you, we're going to boot your ass. Other groups say this is our recommendations. We strongly urge you to follow through with it, and then they'll push their members to go and do that. Others won't even say anything at all about it. In fact, they won't even endorse their own members running. I mean, Eve University is a perfect example of that. They've had multiple people run from Eve Uni, but Eve Uni will not, as a group, endorse anybody for office, which I always thought was kind of counterproductive when you have a chance to get one of your own people on. So what ends up happening is there's a lot of jockeying for position on those tickets. One of the ways to get elected to the CSM, one of the most important things that you have to do as a candidate is to try to get your name on as many different ballots as possible. And in some cases, there are times where the big guys will trade spots with each other because they want to make sure one of their guys gets on, and you want to make sure that one of the other guys gets on because at least that's somebody that you know, even if you happen to be fighting them in the game. So that there's always that kind of horse trading going on back and forth behind the scenes, and the smart CSM members, our CSM candidates, are going out there and talking to the leaders of those big groups, saying, "Hey, what do I need to do to get on your ballot?" And that's something that we always do in nullsec. It's not a thing that's as common in high sec. I think it is a thing that is becoming more common in low sec, where the low sec guys are like, we're going to put a ballot together of all the players that care about low sec and make sure our folks vote this so we get at least one person on. Wormholers have been the poster child for what happens when you can't get your shit together and get everybody on the same page.
Yep. Because
they have enough critical mass to get someone elected if they're all voting for the same person.
Well, they did.
But they don't want to do that.
No, they did. For several years, they had primaries, and they were able to put together a candidate. But then there was a betrayal, and they lost faith in each other.
Correct. Since Noobman on CSM 12, they've had a very hard time getting anybody elected. They didn't get anybody on CSM 13. CSM 14, they got Izuki, and that was largely because Init didn't have a candidate. We wanted a wormhole candidate because we were playing in wormholes, and we went and screwed with Fort Knox. We thought it was good to have these guys represented. So we threw our votes that normally probably would have went to me, to Izuki. We got him on there. So he had a null block support behind him in addition to his wormhole group, which was pretty considerable. And he got elected, and it was great because the wormholers finally had their person. And he did a good job, and he busted his ass. But because wormholers are wormholers, the next year, he can't get support from his own people. They run Laura Secco and him. They end up splitting the vote. Laura Secco comes in 11th. There's no wormholer on the ballot.
Right.
There's no wormholer on the CSM. And they're doing the same goddamn thing this year. If they could just get behind Teddy or get behind Mark or pick somebody and just make that the wormhole guy, or even just put all the wormholers on one ballot, they'd have a better chance of getting somebody elected. But that's not how they do it. And it frustrates the hell out of me because I would like to see somebody ask in the chat, do you want to see a wormhole represent? Absolutely, I do. Absolutely, I do. They deserve to have representation, if only because their gameplay style is so specific and so emergent that not having somebody there that can say, well, this is how it works, means I'm getting all my stuff secondhand, third hand through the players.
Right.
I can't verify whether what I'm being told is right or not. I'm passing on stuff. It could be completely wrong. And that happened to me, and I got crapped on pretty hard. I took some stuff that a Hard Knocks member told me, put it out publicly and said, hey, I'm going to pitch this. What do you guys think? And they tore me to shreds. You don't know anything about this. This is crazy. I'm like, I'm only doing what you guys told me to do. Yeah. So having somebody in there is helpful. Yeah, and I hope that they will get their shit together and make it possible.
Yeah, and that's one of my big objectives in these interviews. Anytime anybody even hints that they're a wormhole candidate, we drill into that because it's like ultimately somebody's going to have to pull that together. But we are, like I said, we're running really low on time. So I will say that on top of that, having a initiative representative giving feedback on behalf of Hard Knocks, I can see how it doesn't even matter what the details are. I could see how somebody could like see that as being problematic given certain historical events, which is why it's important for them to have their own candidate. But one last thing, like I said, you have, a whole nother identity that has become pretty popular and maybe maligned by by people against your guys' group. So before we wrap it up, I just want you to explain what you do, the show, your shtick, and the difference between that and Brisc Rubal, the CSM candidate.
So, all right, Brisc is Brisc. I'm Brisc. In addition to being on the CSM, I also am co-host alongside the Matani on the Meta Show. It is the flagship show of the Imperium News Network. It's on every Saturday at 2000 Eve time, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we are about entertaining people. It's an entertainment show. Some shows will call themselves news. Talking Stations is news. Some will call themselves a stream. I see Extra Squishy streaming. He's a streamer. We are all of the above. We are a show that's about propaganda. It's about having fun. It's about doing funny things, making jokes. It's about pissing off the other side, making them get angry and do dumb things. It's a show that takes the meta in its title seriously. We play all the outside stuff in the game on the Meta Show. Yeah, and that has led some people to...
It goes into what we were talking about earlier in the fact that like it's not just entertainment. It is also it is a cornerstone of the community, right? It is the thing that people go, it is the, everybody goes and watches the same TV show and then you talk about it at work or whatever. For the Imperium in particular, it is a cultural touchstone that allows them to remain the kind of monolith that many people see them as. Sorry, go on.
So I was asked to take over the Meta Show as a co-host in November of 2019. And when we started, we were getting, the show had been, I think it was a good show. People liked it. The Big Red Boat and Matani were the two hosts, but it had just gotten to be the same old thing every week. And Mittens and I sat down and had dinner at Vegas, and he said, hey, I think we have a diamond in the rough here. The show could be so much more than it is, but we need somebody who's willing to put the time in. Are you willing to come and do this? And I said, sure, because I was excited. I wanted to do my own show anyway. And Matt Earl and I had talked about doing that. And I was trying to figure out, what would make sense. And I had done some test stuff and everything. But in the end, having him come and offer this to me, I was a little hesitant at first because there was, the show was viewed as, oh, this is propaganda. It's fake news. Everything on there is not true. And it's all trolling and that type of stuff. But I said, you know what? I can make it the way that I want it to be. So we took it over and we switched, and we started wearing suits, and I wore a tie. Like I always wear a tie. It's part of my shtick. And we started doing everything, and it was fun, and the numbers were good. But I noticed I could tell what the audience was there for. I could tell what they wanted. They wanted the fun stuff. They wanted the bombast. And it was always, I was supposed to be the straight man to Mittens being the Vince McMahon character, and we started doing that. And the more we did it, the better the response was from the audience. And we went from an average show of being 200 to 300 viewers to 5, 6, 7, 800 people at a time. Then the war kicks off in July of 2020, and our numbers went through the roof. The first show after the war, I think we had 3,000 people watching. And after that, we were consistently getting between 1,100 and 1,500 people every week for the show. And we started doing more bombast. It became a lot more of the propaganda, but that's what folks wanted. And yes, sometimes we're mean. And yes, sometimes we call people names. And yes, sometimes Matani talks about going upstairs and having sex with his girlfriend and makes people cringy. But it was one of those things where it became funny and it became entertainment, and that's why we do it. And so I have a number of characters that I do on the show. The most obviously, there is Fountain Frank. That came up. That was a organic joke that just created itself. I recall the first week of the war, or first or second week of the war, Brave went and entoasted like 70 some systems in Quirius. And I pointed it out on the show. I said, this is trolling. There's no way they're going to come back and hit all these timers. They're going to do maybe 5 of them. They're not going to do all 70. And they took that, having said that, as some kind of a like call to arms. And they went and did all 70 of them.
Which
and
makes
then I
you
look like a
Bob.
Right. So then I look, and then the memes, the Baghdad Bob memes started showing up on Reddit of the guy, there are no tanks in Baghdad. And then you hear the sound of the tanks behind him. And I said, you know what? I can do one of two things. I can get upset and try to argue that I wasn't wrong and that I this or that, or I can just embrace it. And that's what I tend to do. I find that when the more valid the criticism, if you're willing to laugh and say, yeah, you got me, that's pretty good. You lean into it, you turn it into a joke, you make it your own, then you control it and it doesn't cause you any damage anymore. So I created this Baghdad Brisc character. That's what I called it. And I got the hat and I put the thing on and everything. And we started doing it. It just became this funny thing. Jay Amazingness, who's one of our producers, coined it Fountain Frank because we were living. The joke was it never lived in Fountain, and we just ran with it, and it became this huge thing that everybody loves now. So now I kind of have to, and I love to, I'm not as good as some people. I love Sheltark Sarkari. He's a great streamer. If you guys have not watched him, watch him. This guy is who he is. Like he's the Akamon pirate. I have never seen this man out of character. He is so good. And he gets mad at me when I say he's playing a character because it's not. This is me. And that's how good he is. Yeah, I can't do that with Frank.
If you want entertainment, like just pure entertainment value streaming content for Eve, like there is no higher peak than his, for sure. That being said, while I didn't witness it myself, I have heard a story that I would like to relay, which is that I have heard of him breaking character exactly once. And that was when a newbie expressed that they were a newbie and asked a question. He stopped everything. He stopped his shtick and made sure that newbie got the help he needed, and then took care. So good dude, just like our good friend here, Brisc Rubal, who's been a good dude on the CSM for this amount of time. You're one of those people that strains the 1 hour limit, and we are definitely over that. But it's not a bad thing. Like you're the guy that like we could go on for even longer. And in fact, I was going to ask you. When this whole thing is over and we get to the voting section, would you mind coming on the Eve show and or the Eve Universe show and helping us kind of digest whatever the results end up being?
Sure. Awesome. I will definitely do, whether it's a victory lap or whether it's a sorry guys I fucked up tour, apology tour, one way or the other, I'll do it.
Well,
so yeah, absolutely, right. Always happy.
Excellent. All right, well, I look forward to that. I look forward to the other stuff that you are doing. And I actually do like the content that you guys come out with Meta Show. I think that it's very entertaining. And that story, I'm very glad that we took the time to let you bring that out because as an entertainer and as a person that's like on front of a camera trying to figure things out, like that's it. That shows me a certain amount of talent and I don't know, the je ne sais quoi that it takes to be this kind of public figure, because it's like you got to be able to run with it and you got to be able to seize the opportunities, and it's a story where you did both. So it's a great example. You're a great candidate. You've been a great CSM member in my opinion, and here's to one more year.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys soon. And remember, June 8th through the 15th, vote Brisc for CSM.
Is it 8th or 3rd?
I think it's the 8th,
I think
isn't
they
it?
moved it to the 3rd. I'll double
Did they
check.
move it? Son of a bitch.
Maybe they moved it to the 8th. If it's to the 8th, then I feel way better because I've been doing 4 a day because I thought it was the 3rd. Either way, I will say that I will be making a final video that like explains the exact process and putting it at the beginning of the thing. So keep an eye out because apparently CCP can't communicate things. Or maybe I'm just confusing things. Who knows?
Amazing, huh? Amazing about that.
If only we had some group of players that like were able to help them.
That could tell them how to communicate better. God.
All right. Thanks,
Dear
Brisc.
Lord.
Good luck.
Thanks, Ash. I'll catch you guys next time. Thanks for all for